This is Fantasy Football Today from CBSSports.com.
Week 1 is here, and we've got you set to win your leagues. Let's start out 1-0. Welcome to an exclusive edition of Fantasy Football Today on CBS Local Sports. I'm Jamie Eisenberg, this is Dave Richard, and we've got some start-sits to get your lineup right for this particular week, and maybe for the season as well. Let's start with quarterbacks, Dave. I'm going to start Jay Cutler. I think this is one of those matchups that Cutler has for the chance to get off on the right foot. He's done it now each of the last 3 years coming into 2014, and I think it continues this week. The Buffalo Bills defense missing Kiko Alonso, missing Jarris Byrd, new defensive coordinator and Jim Schwartz, and Cutler has all those weapons at his disposal with Brandon Marshall and Alshon Jeffrey. I think Cutler gets off to a great start. Love him this week as a top 10 quarterback.
How many fantasy points do you get for getting beat up and sacked and hit in the backfield as a quarterback?
Not a lot.
No, you don't get a lot, and that's what I'm worried about with RG3. That's why he's my sit quarterback this week. Going up against Houston, listen, Texans secondary, nothing to really fear. RG3 didn't look great in the preseason, and now he's going to be forced to deal with Jadeveon Clowney and J.J. Watt. And Houston's defense looking to make a statement. Week 1, home game, I think it's a bad place for RG3 to be. I think his stats are going to be bad. I'm worried about him surviving the game. He's a sit for me. I don't want him in my fantasy lineup.
You don't like RG3, but you obviously do like Chris Johnson this week with his matchup against the Raiders.
And it's weird to say I like Chris Johnson because I spent a lot of the offseason talking about how much I didn't really like Chris Johnson. But if you got him on your fantasy team, you look at this matchup against Oakland, you look at how he could be used with the Jets offense, it's actually not that bad. I like him in 1-week leagues. I like him in standard fantasy leagues. I even like him in PPR leagues. I think he'll do a lot catching the ball out of the backfield. Look for Chris Johnson to finish the week as a top 15 running back.
Be a little bit more positive. It's better than not that bad. He should be actually pretty
He should be like sensational, like rainbows coming out of his ears and money falling from the sky. It's going to be great.
Let's hope he makes money fall out of the sky. For fantasy owners, one guy I don't know if you're going to trust to start to make money for you this week is Maurice Jones-Drew in that same game. Look, it's a cross-country trip. We don't really love when those West Coast teams come to the East Coast for those 1 o'clock Eastern starts. And Jones-Drew, great one run in the preseason, 40-yard touchdown run. Rest of his numbers, 10 carries, 27 yards. That's not exactly the best average. Now, I know he has a good history against Rex Ryan. 2 times he's faced Rex Ryan. He's done a very good job. But I think with a new team, who knows how long he'll be on the field. Darren McFadden's still going to play a role. And the strength of the Jets defense still in their run defense. So I'm actually going to sit Maurice Jones-Drew. Not that I'm going to start Darren McFadden over him, but I'm sitting both Raiders running backs.
Yeah, and I know that talking about wide receivers that we like, you're a big fan of a lot of our wide receivers in the Saints-Falcons game. Julio Jones is going to be a stud. Roddy White's a good player. You've got your eye on Marcus Colston.
I do. I think Colston has an opportunity to come out and establish himself and show people, who forgot about him, especially on draft day, that he could still be a top 20 type fantasy receiver. I think he's going to be that way this week because his foot problem, not an issue right now. He says he feels healthy. It's a good matchup for him. He's got 3 touchdowns in his last 5 meetings against Atlanta. As Dave said, this could be an offensive bonanza, to borrow a phrase from one of our friends, Adam Mazer on CBSSports.com. I think this will be one of those high-scoring games for the week, and I think Colston plays a big role.
Yeah, a receiver, a number 1 receiver I don't really like this week is Mike Wallace for the Dolphins. And when you think about the Dolphins situation, they're playing at home against the Patriots. Yeah, they're going to play from behind. They're going to put the ball in the air. That should be good for Wallace, right? Not so much. I don't think he and Ryan Tannehill are on the same page. And the Patriots did some nice things to revamp their defense this offseason. They added Darrelle Revis. And I don't know if you've been following football for very long, but Darrelle Revis happens to be one of the best, 3 cornerbacks in the National Football League. That means he's going to be playing and looking for Mike Wallace. I think it could be a tough day statistically for Mike Wallace on Sunday.
So I mentioned Jay Cutler gets off to a good start, and that is targets. And one guy left out is somebody that you like at the tight end position.
Yeah, that's Martellus Bennett. And listen, everybody knows Alshon Jeffrey. You're going to start him at wide receiver for the Bears. Brandon Marshall, you've probably heard of him. He's good too. But I think Martellus Bennett, who typically gets off to hot starts, is going to be a great fantasy play. In September, just the month September, the last 2 Septembers, 5 touchdowns in 8 games for Martellus Bennett. Look for Jay Cutler to look for him against a Bills defense that lost their defensive coordinator, lost their starting free safety, and lost their starting linebacker. So that means that Martellus Bennett is going to have some great matchups.
I totally agree with you. And one tight end I would start Bennett over, who may have been drafted ahead of Bennett, is Heath Miller. This is one of those decisions that fantasy owners had to make. One of the last tight ends to come off the board as a starting caliber option was Heath Miller, was Martellus Bennett. Well, hopefully you chose wisely for week 1. And Martellus Bennett was your guy because Heath Miller is probably going to struggle against Cleveland. Mike Pettine's defense, he goes from Buffalo to Cleveland, the new head coach there. Good history in defending against tight ends, and Miller's got a bad history against the Browns. So I think Miller, for the course of the season, going to be a top 12, if not top 10 guy, now that his knee's 100%. But for week 1, you can sit him.
Yeah, go with a different option at tight end if you can with Heath Miller. And Bennett's one of those guys. Delaney Walker's a guy I like. Another sleeper tight end that you've been talking about has been
Travis Kelce.
It's another one out there, a great one to just stash on your roster.
Yes, and if you like what you heard here, check out Fantasy Football Today, Sunday at 11 a.m. Eastern. We have you covered with more starts and sits. Check out our podcast, certainly our columns throughout the week. We have you covered to win your fantasy leagues.
Good luck.